Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carrie Morley, and I am the Community Specialist here at the National Speakers Association. Thank you for joining us for the second webinar in the NSA Convention Countdown Series. Today's webinar is being recorded, and a link to watch the recording will be sent out to all registrants later this week. If you have any questions or comments throughout the webinar, please type them in the box in the control panel on the right side of your screen, and we will answer them as soon as possible. There are less than 2 weeks before the early rate deadline for the NSA convention in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Saturday, July 27th through Tuesday, July 30th. Make sure you register for the convention by June 10th to receive the early rate savings. You can learn more and register at nsaspeaker.org/attend/convention. Again, that's nsaspeaker.org/attend/convention. Also, we are choosing one lucky winner to receive a free registration to this year's NSA convention. To enter, go to facebook.com/speakermagazine and click the tab that says Convention Giveaway. Again, that's facebook.com/speakermagazine and click the Convention Giveaway tab. One of the presenters that I am most looking forward to seeing at the NSA convention this year is Certified Speaking Professional BWalter. He is with us today to share more content with us, different than what he'll be sharing in Philadelphia. Brian was the chair of the NSA Laugh Lab, and at this year's NSA convention in July, he'll have another session to talk about the best of the best from the Laugh Lab, how to be funnier even if you're not that funny now. He'll also be hosting a session exclusively for CSPs and CPAEs called Video Action, a bazillion extreme ways to actively use video during your presentations. BWalter runs Extreme Meetings, which provides customized infotainment on stage and on screen to make meetings memorable. He's here with us today to talk about verbal ping pong, how to deliver an elevator speech so that people actually want you to keep talking. Thanks so much for being with us today, Brian.
All right, thanks so much. All right, well, we are going to be jumping into how to create a better elevator speech, but first we're going to do a little virtual interactivity here. And I say virtual because you're not actually going to be responding on that panel on the right, but you're actually going to be shouting out your responses where no one can hear you. So I'm going to trust that you were going to do that, because now we're going to do a little 8 questions with a little exercise I like to call fact or crap. That's right, fact or crap. Here's how it's going to work. I'm going to share a factoid on screen, and if you think it's true, in the privacy of your own office or home, yell out fact. If you think it's incorrect or even made it up, you must yell out crap. Please do not substitute any words for crap. I will then reveal the correct answer, and if you got it right, keep track, because I'm curious how many you will get right. All right, and this absolutely pertains to our topic. Our first factoid is, okay, according to its website, NSA has 683 members in good standing who describe themselves as experts on leadership. Your answer is fact or crap, fact or crap. And the correct answer is fact. That's right. So using leadership as a way to differentiate yourself, not such a good idea. Okay, factoid number 2. An oft-quoted Yale University study of the top power words lists the #1 most persuasive word in the English language as free. What do you think? Fact or crap? Fact or crap? Huh? And the correct answer is crap. Actually, according to that Yale study, it's the word easy. That is the most persuasive word. All right, factoid number 3. On Amazon.com, there are over 500 books about platypuses, but just over 20 about how to create an effective elevator speech or pitch. What do you think? Fact or crap? I can't hear you. Fact or crap? All right, correct answer is fact. That's right. So not so many books out there on how to do this well. All right, factoid number 4. Deloitte, as in Deloitte and Touche, Deloitte offers a free app called Bullfighter that will automatically highlight business buzzwords and other forms of bull you write in email, Word docs, and PowerPoint slides, theoretically, so you could change or delete them. What do you think? Is that fact, or did I completely make that up and that is crap? And the correct answer is fact. That is right. You can download that to eliminate business buzzwords from your communications. All right. And the home stretch here, number 5. All right. A climactic scene in the 1988 movie Working Girl has Melanie Griffith successfully giving an elevator speech to a CEO in an elevator. Your answer, fact or crap? Fact or crap? And the correct answer is fact. That's right. Okay, 3 more questions. Factoid number 6. According to a 2007 study by the Kellogg School of Management, the most effective elevator speech length is between 30 and 45 seconds. What do you think, fact or crap? Correct answer is crap. Okay, I made that one up. All right, here, number 7. However, according to a 2004 study by the Wharton School of Business, the most effective elevator speech length is between 15 and 30 seconds. What do you think, fact or crap? Fact or crap? And the correct answer is crap. Okay, I made that one up too. All right, last factoid. According to hours and hours of research by me, there doesn't appear to be a single U.S. business school study ever done on elevator speech length or effectiveness. And your answer is fact. Hopefully you got that one right. Thanks for playing. Just curious, if any of you got all like 7 or 8 right, go ahead and text it in so I could see who got that many right, because I would be very impressed. All right, the reason that we did those questions is because all of us have to answer a question. Every day, or depending upon our businesses, every week, every single NSA member is asked the question. Now, you know what question I'm asking. Someone comes up to you, they're talking to you in an informal situation, and then they say, what do you do? Now, if we're to be honest, most of us, deep down, say, ah! Okay, that's our inside voice. That's our inside voice. But that's what we're thinking. What a question that should be professionally energizing. This is the most important, open-ended, possibility-laden question we ever receive in our professional life. But for most of us, when we get this question, it's actually a source of stress. Because the truth be told, a lot of NSAers, we actually fear getting the question. And this is true because you can kind of tell when someone in person or over the phone is going to ask you that question. And they're talking, they're, and then you can kind of feel that question coming. And a lot of us actually try to avoid it because we know that what comes out of our mouth next will either be a stumble-bumble response or something that could even embarrass us. So a lot of times we actually avoid the question. So we're going to fix that today. You're not going to have the answer to that question, but we're going to provide a process on how to get there that's different from other ones you may have considered before. But first, let's start with the reality here that as speakers or as professional communicators or info marketers or independent trainers, we are not the only ones who struggle with this question. Fortune 500 companies struggle with this question. Give you an anecdote here. I had a project opportunity with Pitney Bowes, Fortune 500 company. They've been around for 100 years, Pitney Bowes. And they said, Brian, we'd like to hire you and license your program to come up with an answer to that question. What does Pitney Bowes do that could be delivered by all employees no matter what division that they're in? Because they realize EFO, because that'll be an overage. And this is the response that he came back. He said, if Brian could have the answer to us done in time for me to go on my February trip to Vail so that I have an answer to give on the ski lift, then it's approved. Because even the chief financial officer realized that a simple question like, what does Pitney Bowes do, what does PB do, requires a non-salesy answer, and he didn't have one. Now, of course, in that case, we got it done in time, so that he had his answer on his ski lift. All right, so we are not alone in fearing this. Now, the first place to go when we're talking about an elevator speech is, what is your elevator speech not? What it is not an obvious pitch. Now, it's interesting. Oftentimes, we come up with this elaborate answer for an elevator speech, but we're actually answering the wrong question. They said, what do you do? But we answer as if they had asked, so could you sell me really hard right now? And that's the type of answer that we give them. So it's not, we have to make sure we're answering the right question here. All right, so what else? Now, the reason we do that is because, I had to say it, most of us have been led astray by elevator speech systems out there. Now, it's interesting. As far as I can tell, there is no objective research that has ever been done by any business school or large agency on elevator speeches. All the systems out there are actually by other speakers or by PR professionals. And all of them, almost without exception, and I think I've read all the books out there, have a particular example that they use. This is the elevator speech system equivalent of the starfish story. And you know where I'm going with this. What they're going to say is, imagine, speaker, that you walk into an elevator and there's CEO Kenner Barbie, and they turn to you and say, so, what do you do? And you've got till you get to the 22nd floor to explain exactly what you do, and at the end of the time that they hire you, and then they get off on the 22nd floor. Now, I'm not saying that will never happen to anyone ever, but if there was 100 speakers and I said, how many has this happened to you? Maybe 2 of you would say that's happened to them. So you don't want to design an elevator speech for that type of scenario. Generally, we are not going to be called upon to give our elevator speech in an elevator. So that isn't the context that we should do it. So fair enough, you'd say, okay, Brian, well, how did you develop your system? Why should we care about your system? I worked in internal retail advertising, which is about as hard sell as you can go. And there are certain things that I learned about advertising, and I based my system on this. So kind of review a little bit of retail advertising. Most of us, regardless whether we're reading the newspaper or now we're going to CNN.com or anything like that, we don't like ads. So we don't pick up or go to a website with the purpose of reading an ad. In fact, we train our brains to avoid ads, but yet still they get through. Now, no matter what type of media it is almost, it's really going to come down to the core of good advertising comes down to headline, subhead, body copy. Now, I'm talking about the written part of the communication, not the visual part. Now, here's a question here. If you're looking at what is the headline's job, if you're looking at an ad, again, regardless whether it's online or in a newspaper, what is the headline's job? It's to get you to stop. It's to get you to take notice of it. So you were not expecting to get an ad. You were kind of going along, looking at articles, looking at pictures, looking at captions, and then suddenly, boom, that headline got you to stop and go, all right, what is the subheadlines or the subhead's job? That's to make the headline make sense. Or as we like to say in the business, we say the subhead's job is to pay off the headline. Now, at that point, you've got the headline and the subhead. You know most of the story. I mean, you have a sense of what it's about. You don't know the whole story, but you know most of the story there. So then what's the body copy's job? The body copy's job is to give you enough of the story so you can make a decision. And that decision is, that's interesting, I'm going to respond to that ad, or I'm not going to respond to it, but now I at least think differently about whatever it was advertising or talking about here. Now, let me give you an example, a real-world example here. So let's say you have an iPhone. Oh, I'm sorry, I obviously have a typo there. Let's say you ponied up. I ponied up for an iPhone, all right? And I'm seeing an advertising from a completely made-up company. We'll just call it AT&T. Okay, completely made up. And I see this headline: free unlimited data for your iPhone 5 for a year. Now, I would be thinking, okay, that could get me to stop. Whether you are an iPhone owner or not an iPhone owner, that is not something that you were expecting, and so it would get you to stop. Free unlimited data for your iPhone for a year. I mean, how could they do that? So again, it did its job. It got you to stop. So then, what is the subhead there? In this particular case, it would be no payments on your calling plan for 12 months with a 10-year contract. So now you're going, okay, now this makes sense. Now this makes sense. Okay, I got it. So now at that point, it's like that's probably as far as you're going to get. You might not go any farther. You might be thinking, okay, I have the story there. I'm not going to do it, but at least now I get it. I'm interested. Now, you'll think differently about AT&T's because you got the headline and the subhead. That's enough information. But for some of you, you're thinking, okay, actually, that doesn't sound like such a bad deal. I want to know more. So you would go to the body copy. In this case, At the end of contract, certain terms and conditions apply. You must sell your iSolve to iTunes. So now you have the story and you can actually make a decision. All right, so that's the basis that I developed my elevator speech on, the proven advertising of headline, subhead, body copy. So let's kind of go back to the land of elevator speech here so that we can see how this applies to us. All right. So what is an elevator speech then? Here is my definition of an elevator speech. Your elevator speech is a progressively revealed conversational answer to the question, what do you do, that you deliver in such a way that people want you to keep talking. All right? So let's break that down and kind of go each different component there. Now let's start with progressively revealed. All right? About how long do you have to give your answer when someone says, so, what do you do? Now, one way of looking at that is, now I've read about just about every book, article, or system out there, and there is an average. What do you think is the average of the average length of time that these books and systems say you have to give your answer? What do you think? Say it out loud, write it down. You know, if you're with someone, share it so that they know. The average is 30 seconds. But let's just say that they're wrong. All right, let's say that they're wrong by half. Let's say that you only have 15 seconds to give your response when someone says, so what do you do? Let's test that to see if that feels right to you. So I'm going to ask myself, so Brian, what do you do? And then I'm going to give an answer that's exactly 15 seconds long, but I'm not actually going to use words because I don't want you to be distracted by what I'm saying. I just want you to feel the length of it, right? So Brian, what do you do? Blah, 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 blah. Blah, 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 blah. That's 8 seconds. Blah, 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 blah. That's what 15 seconds feels like. Did that feel right to you? Hopefully, you're horrified at this point. You're like, no, that felt way, way, way too long. And you're right, because you don't have 15 seconds. You have about 3 to 5 seconds. Now, you might be thinking, whoa, 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 Brian, you don't seem to understand. I have a very complex, business model that I can't possibly say all that I do or speak on or I'm an expert on in 3 to 5 seconds. You're right. It is impossible. Don't do it. Here's the biggest shift. Your elevator speech, your answer to the question, what do you do, should not be a self-sabotaging monologue. Instead, it's a dialogue. You are playing a game of verbal ping pong. Now, how it works is the person starts by hitting the ball to you. They say, so, what do you do? They got the game started. Now, in ping pong, when someone hits you the ball, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to hit the ball back. And then they decide if you'll keep playing. That's how the game works. So, yes, you are ultimately going to speak more than 3 to 5 seconds, but not at first. That's the first most important principle. When someone says, what do? You do not go on this huge rampage of 15 to 30 seconds worth of an answer. If you do, people will flee from you. All right, that's the first part, progressively revealed. Let's now go to the second part of the definition, a progressively revealed conversational answer. So, what do we mean by that? It's that you speak like a normal person speaks, not like you're quoting from the Wall Street Journal. Tell me if this isn't kind of how things sound. Yes, I'm an author expert who speaks professionally and consults on change, leadership, and customer service issues, which I deliver maximum value through value-added dynamic solutions as well as fully integrated employee engagement programs, which can be measurable, blah, 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 blah. Now, that might look good written down, but when it verbally comes out of your mouth in this non-conversational way, it sounds like you are just making BS up. Now, why does so much of what we say actually sound like that? Because when we think of elevator speeches, so many of the people giving us advice come from the world of media. And so they say, well, you give little sound bites. And so it acts like we're being interviewed by a news organization. But, we're not being interviewed by a news organization. When we're doing our elevator speech, we're being interviewed. We're being asked to answer that question by normal people or business people. So when we give immediate response, it doesn't work. In fact, when we answer an informal conversational question with a formal business speak response, what happens is we go into what I call used car salesman mode. That's how we are perceived by the person that we're talking to. So we say, so what do you do? It's like, well, what do I do? Well, let me tell you about that. And again, suddenly they, ooh, because again, they're having a conversational level question with us, and we respond in a non-conversational way. So we're breaking the interaction rules that the person was expecting. All right, so that's what we mean by progressively revealed conversational answer. All right, so let's go to the next part here. That you deliver in such a way that people want you to keep talking. Now, I'm going to talk about the concept of opt-in. Now, these days, we know that you can't send an email to somebody unless they give you permission. But you have to have a business relationship with them. So most organizations, they don't just have you opt-in, they have you double opt-in. So let's say you're walking into a J. Crew and a salesperson does a really good job of helping you, and they're ringing you up for your sweater or khaki pants or whatever it is you got, they say, hey, would you like to be on our newsletter mailing list? And you say, absolutely. So they go to their computer and they type in, Brian@BrianWalter.com. Clickety-click, thank you very much. Will I immediately get their newsletter? No, I will not. What will I get? I will get an email saying, you gave us your email address, giving us permission to send you an email, opt-in. Please click on this email so that we verify that you have given us your email that you already gave us so that we can send you the newsletter. You opt in and then you double opt in. Or as you can see with this one, they actually have you modify further. Yes, you said we could email you, but please give us a sense of how frequently you would like us to email you. Again, the business world electronically is very much into opt-in, double opt-in, or modifying how we should really do permission marketing. So your elevator speech should be the same way. We want the person you're talking to opt in to what it is we're saying, to give us permission to keep talking. So how will we know that happens? We will know that happens when the person we're talking to gives us the Scooby-Doo response. Now you might be thinking, what do you mean? They say, what do you do? And we give that 3 to 5 seconds answer, and they go, brr, what? Brr, brr. They will either make a audible what and comment on what it was that we were saying, or they will move their face. Their eyebrow will go up. They will cock their head. Yes, kind of like a dog. They will their forehead will scrunchy. There will be a physical reaction. Now, if they don't move their face when you give your 3 to 5 second answer, you were really boring. You were not interesting. And if they give you what I call the double blink response, they go, so, Brian, what do you do? Blah, 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 blah. Blink, blink. That means I'm trying not to look at my watch and run away right now. All right. So that's what we mean by the Scooby-Doo response here. Now, what is it that they're hoping for? In other words, when someone asks you the question, so what do you do? What are they hoping? They're hoping you're going to be really interesting, that you're going to say, I'm a Navy SEAL, I'm a brain surgeon, I am the guy who makes, does Coinstar and turns your coins into dollar bills. They asked you the question because you were more interesting than they were expecting when they started talking to you. So their hope is that you're going to continue to be interesting. So that is the opportunity with your elevator speech, to continue to be as interesting, if not even more interesting, than when you talk to them. That's because when you're giving your elevator speech, you're talking to one of two audiences. One I like to say are civilians. These are just normal people that you meet in the course of life. They're in line with you at Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts. They're on the sidelines during your kid's soccer game. They're sitting next to you on the plane, at a social event or a family gathering. They're just normal people who found you interesting, and they asked an open-ended question and said, what do you do? Those are civilians. Now, those who are prospects are those who you're talking to in a professional capacity, and they say, so what do you do? Or if they know what you do, when they say, so what do you do, what they're really saying, so what could you do for me? Again, similar question, but slightly different audiences here. So with civilians, when the best case scenario is when they give you an elevator speech, they're not going to hire you based on your response, but you're going to position yourself in their brains as even more interesting than they thought. And so when someone eventually asks them, do you know so-and-so? Oh, yeah, I know her. Yeah, she's really interesting. She's really cool. She does this really cool thing, and that can lead to business. When they're a prospect and you give a compelling elevator speech response, they're thinking, wow, tell me more. And that will lead into a conversation, which is really you basically figuring out if they are truly a prospect. All right, so let's keep going here. All right, the system, the actual system itself, instead of headline, subhead, body copy, the system that we're going to use for crafting a compelling elevator speech is wow, how, now. All right, wow, how, now. That is the system that we're going to be using here. All right, so let's give you an example from the real world. I had a client, Medtronic. Medtronic makes medical devices here, and so I was doing a sales event for them, and so here is how their sales reps answered the question when someone, a civilian or someone else said, oh, so what do you do, or what does Medtronic do? And they would say something like, I'm a medical device sales rep for Medtronic, the Fortune 500's largest manufacturer of automated external defibrillators for the commercial and educational markets, which are used by non-medical personnel for the urgent treatment of critical cardiac emergencies. Now, is that true? Yes, that is true. Is it interesting? No. Does it make you say, oh gosh, I hope they keep talking? No. Pretty much when they said, hi, I'm a medical device sales rep, pretty much they lost us at that. They lost us at rep because rep sounds like reptile, and again, rep is never a good term. So instead, I said, okay, I'm going to come up with some different wow lines. And again, your wow line is the first 3 to 5 second line that you say when someone says, what do you do? So came up with some different ones. So again, imagine you're working for Medtronic, and we said, so what do you do? I sell a product that makes near-death experiences a little farther away. You couldn't say, oh, that's nice, and walk away. It's impossible. Couldn't do that. All right, another response. I work for Medtronic. We're like AAA for the heart. Again, what? Another one. I'm in the cardiac arrest business. What? I mean, if you said that, someone said, what do you mean? They would cock their head. They would be curious. You could say, I'm in the cardiac arrest business. I'm in the human jumper cable business. Now, here's my favorite one. Now, not very many of these could, not very many of the reps could pull this last one off. But I said, some of you, this might, match your personality, and you could actually use this one. So what do you do? Actually, what I do is quite shocking. Any of these could work, and you can also use more than one, but it's best if you have this as your go-to line so that you can say it in a conversational way. Now, by saying that, that makes you interesting. That makes people curious. So now they're going to give you that Scooby-Doo response. They're either going to make a nonverbal comment like, or they might say, huh, what do you mean by that? They might actually ask you, please tell me more. Or they might just cock their head, give you a quizzical look, which again is permission. They're opting in for you to say another sentence. All right. Let's see here. So now we go to the how line. Now the how line, here's what we had them say. It's my job to get our automated external defibrillator units, like those paddle things they use on ER, into companies and schools. Now you see, again, what was the job? The job of the how line is to explain how that first sentence you said makes sense. You're going to pay off that wow line. You got them hooked, but now they get a sense. It's my job to get our automated external defibrillator units, like those paddle things used in ERs, into companies and schools. Now, most of the time when we're talking to someone, that's all we're going to get. We're going to get a wow line, and we're going to get one how line. Now, sometimes we can keep going if they go, oh, really? That's really interesting. Yeah, so normal non-medical people like you and me can actually save the lives of our coworkers and kids. Now, here's the hardest thing for speakers here, and that is to stop talking. When someone says, what do, you say your how line. They react. You say your wow line after they say, what do you do? They react with a Scooby-Doo response. You say your how line, and then you need to stop talking. Because what's going to happen is that people are going to process that. They're going to verbally apply it to themselves. Now, in this case of the external defibrillator, oh my gosh, that's right. My son's he plays. He's in cross country, and they had an incident where one of the students actually collapsed, and the nurse brought it over, and they saved his life. I mean, they're going to apply that no matter what we do. When we have an interesting how line, they're going to now apply it to themselves. You need to let them talk. Now, in most of the cases, that's it. The elevator speech is done because they're going to move on. But if they're really interested in what you do, then they will give you another opt-in. They will say, so how does that work? Or what's that like? Or can you give me an example? And so that's the last part of the formula. Wow, how, now. And now is when you're using the 3 most powerful words in the English language. Now, for example. Now, for example. All right, now to take a look, that is your elevator speech right there. It's not 5 pages. It's not 7 paragraphs. It's 2, maybe 3 sentences, and then you set up, if they wish, for a story. Now, for example. All right, so Carrie, so we have any questions so far?
Not yet, but I'm sure there will be some soon. If anybody has any questions, type them in the box to your right.
All right. Now, I noticed it looked like a couple people had a speaker issue. Hopefully that was an isolated case.
Yeah, I think we just had a few people. So if anybody does have any problems, I'd suggest calling in via telephone. Sometimes that works better. And it looks like we do have a few questions coming in now.
All right.
Joshua would like to know if you can tell a story for the now.
Absolutely. And I would say, Joshua, hold that on, because after the questions, we're going to get into 3 types of different how responses, because it's going to depend what type of now, for example, you use depends on how you're wishing to position yourself. So I would say hold that one, and I'll check in with you again to make sure I answered your question. So, all right, next question.
Getting a lot of people who say this is awesome so far. What about how do you come up with those really good wow lines?
All right, so the wow line. In fact, let's go ahead and do that here. Let's kind of go for some speaker application. Now, here is where we go south, and that's when we think, oh, this is about being funny. Now, I've used some funny examples or some quirky examples. But I'm also giving a presentation right now. And so it's, again, here's the biggest thing. It's not about being clever. It's about being interesting. Now, depending upon what people do, it's about being intriguing. In other words, what can you say that's cool or interesting about what you do that makes people go, I want to know more? You hint at it. Now, if you make something that's funny or they can't possibly even have an inkling of what it is you're talking about, then what you've actually done is saying, hi, would you be my audience? Thanks for asking that question, but now you're the dummy and I'm the funny guy. People don't like that. For example, they'd say, so what do you do? I help people be sexier at work. What? What? And so unless you're a sex therapist, that is a horrible response, and maybe that or you're an image consultant or something, but it's like that, or someone says, I help people walk through the hot coals of life. It's like, what? It feels like you're setting them up, and they don't like that. So you can't be too crazy here. Here's an example. So here's an example that all of us could use. I'm not saying this is the best solution for you, but if you're like, oh gosh, I really don't know what to say for that first one, simply saying, actually, what I do is really different. There's no one who could say, oh, I don't really care, I got to go. So again, that's kind of one that I'll occasionally use when I want to kind of ratchet up the tension, ratchet up the drama just a little bit to get their attention. Now here's a typical one. Someone would say, because remember, there are 683 NSA speakers who say, I'm all about leadership. We can't stand out if that's our response. So what do? I write and speak on leadership. You and 682 others that we know of. Now, what if you just changed one word? I write and speak on leadership projection. Leadership projection is intriguing. What does that mean? What you go, huh? What do you mean? They would want to know more. So here's my recommendation. How you come up with the how line is you said, what is the most interesting slice of what you do? Emphasize that slice. So with your elevator speech, you talk about the slice, the most interesting part of what you do, and then if they're interested, that can later on lead to something broader. Don't try to sell everything that you do. Don't try to describe it because you're going to be so generic, no one will care. All right, that's the answer. Hopefully that helps a little bit. All right, what else we got there, Carrie?
I have a person who's asking, do you recommend this same process when you are at a networking event when you get your 30-second commercial?
Yes, because here's the, because again, you will ultimately speak for 30 seconds or so, but not at first. So, for example, I'll give you with my business. It's like if I was at a networking event, or if someone walked up to me, they said, "So, Brian, what do you do?" I said, "I'm a communication consultant and corporate humorist." And people are like, "Whoa, what do you mean a humorist?" Now, if I'm in front of an audience, I might just pause for a second. I'm a communications and corporate humorist. Now, you might be thinking, what? Basically, I run a business called Extreme Meetings, which is customized infotainment to make meetings memorable. Stop. That's my wow and how line. I'm a communications consultant and corporate humorist. That's my wow line. My how line is, I run a business called Extreme Meetings, which is customized infotainment to make meetings memorable. Stop. Now, every single time that I say that, whether I'm in front of an individual or I'm in front of an audience, they're going to start talking about meetings. I mean, it's like, oh, yeah, meetings are horrible at our company. Oh, my gosh, that sounds interesting. Well, meetings suck at our company, blah, blah, blah. They'll either get a buzz or they'll actually, and you just smile and nod, and then they'll say something. So how does that work? And that's where you're going to go into your how line. All right. Other questions,
right.
or should we?
Here's another good one.
Yep.
What works better to have, a general wow, how, now, or a set for each of your keynotes and use them as you see fit?
I think it's better to have a general one that you have. In other words, that this needs to become the core part of who you are. You could be woken up at 2 o'clock in the morning and then boom. Because most of the time, I should clarify this. This is when I think when you're talking to civilians, talking to people in general. Now, if you had a different set for something that you know what they're interested in, then you're really making what I call an elevator pitch. An elevator pitch and elevator speech are different things. An elevator pitch is there is a known need, and they know me as someone who could possibly fulfill this need, so they are asking me what I could do to meet that need. That's selling. You're making an elevator pitch. An elevator speech is when someone has made a conversational inquiry about you, about what you do, and we don't really know if there's any need at all. Does that make sense? All right. There was one more there from Stephen Koch, or Coach. What does that one say?
Yeah, he says, my wow is really wow. So wow that I am challenged pulling the truly best wow. Through his inspirational life story, companies are hiring him to inspire their salespeople to be extraordinary. Okay, so that would be what I would call Wall Street Journal speak. That is excellent stuff that will look fantastic in writing, but verbally it's going to sound clunky. So I'm going to say, so I would say, what my counsel would be to have your formula, your wow, how, now, which would be, it's like, okay, so in other words, so what do you do? I, help, inspire sales forces at work or something. That's, okay, oh, you're a motivational speaker. I mean, that's how people are going to go. And so my encouragement to you is to find a conversational way. What is, how do you inspire them? Is it your background, your story? You help them see things they don't know. Find a slice of what you do that you can emphasize so you can reveal gradually what it is that you do. All right? All right. We have a few more, but we'll get more at the end.
Okay, great. All right, so let's jump into, because some of you asked about, I think it was Joshua or somebody wanted to know about the now for example cares. All right, so for now, there's different types. Now I'm going to talk about 3 different types of now for examples here. One is what I call the train wreck. Now again, this is a conversational way. The train wreck now, for example, is when you prove your credibility, your expertise by, in an interesting way, identifying the pain that the person you're talking to likely has. So let's say you're an expert on helping manage large, complex IT projects, and you speak to IT groups and you speak to managements on how to manage or implement their large IT programs. Okay, that sounds pretty dense, pretty complicated there. So if that's the case, it's like, so what's your wow line? It's like, so what do you do? I'm kind of like the IT whisperer. Oh, what do you mean? Then you would have a how line. It's like, I help management and IT talk to each other so they can actually get projects done on time and on budget. Boom, you got your wow and how. They're not going to process, oh my gosh, we've had problems. So how does that work? Now, what's going to help you there is to show that you get the problems. And you would say, now, for example, and then you would describe the horror stories that take place. Again, your credibility comes from describing the pain. And the deal is, what organizational pain are you the aspirant for? So you go, don't you hate it when this happens and this happens, and they say, oh, we never knew that. You changed the specs. We have to charge you more. Oh, and you escalate and you go, pain, 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 pain. I prevent that from happening. I'm like, oh my gosh, I should take your card. We should refer you because we have problems like that all the time. With all sorts of different topics, your credibility comes not from you emphasizing your solution, but from you proving that you understand their pain. The insight into, yes, he or she gets us. They're ready to throw money at you. They're ready to say, oh my gosh, it's like, let me take your card now. So that's a train wreck type of story. Again, you would start by saying, well, now, for example, you know how when, boom, and then escalate, escalate, escalate. You can even get it to almost being preposterous at the end because they're going to be nodding their little heads off. They're going to be giving that Scooby-Doo response like, yeah, oh my gosh, he or she totally gets us. That's what we do with the train wreck example. Next one is what I call the surfer dude response. Like, it's like this, like this. It's all about a single or double simile. Now, for my particular business, when I say, I run a business called Extreme Meetings, which provides customized infotainment to make meetings memorable, they first go and they process it about themselves, and they say, oh my gosh, meetings are horrible at my company, blah, 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 blah. And then at a certain point they say, again, they don't really know exactly what I mean, though. But then they said, so what is that like? How does that work? And I say, now, for example, think of it like a Saturday Night Live show all about your business. Whenever I say, think of it like a Saturday Night Live show all about your business, they always go, oh. In that single sentence, I've given them an example of something they can relate to. So the more complicated we are, the example becomes, in other words, what is what we do like? What is what we do like? Now, for sometimes, a single simile won't be enough. There was a speaker friend of mine, Jim Mathis, and for a while he was a leadership speaker guy, like everybody else. Then he started describing. He was from the South, and he started describing himself. I speak on leadership, and he goes, and I'm like, oh yeah, like you and 682 others. And he said, think of me like Jeff Foxworthy meets Dr. Phil on leadership. Now, you guys probably have never met Jim Mathis. Think of it like Jeff Foxworthy meets Dr. Phil on leadership. Just with that sentence, we have a sense of his style. He's going to have funny Southern humor where he gives folksy, blunt wisdom on leadership. We know that because he's now, for example, was a double simile. All right? All right, so one more example on the type of now is a movie trailer. Now you think, what is the purpose of a movie trailer? And the purpose of a movie trailer is to get you to want to go see the movie. So instead of, well, like I say, when you see a movie trailer, does a movie trailer show you scenes? No. No, a movie trailer does not show you scenes. A movie trailer shows you, here's a funny line, here's an explosion, here's a car chase, here's an I'll be back line. Here it shows you little snippets of the action of the most exciting parts of the movie. And then it doesn't even follow necessarily a logical order, just boom, 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 with interesting lines, scenes, visuals, and then suddenly coming to a theater near you this Saturday. So with your answer, you show what it's like of you being in action with that audience, the messages that you reveal, and then you stop suddenly and say, oh, that's how it works, and you stop suddenly. So it's a movie trailer aspect of that. Now I saw Stephen came in and he said he was talking about different climbing 7/7 and snowboarding down. That's right. Sorry, Stephen, I didn't have your background on that one. So yes, you want to, when you're giving your wow, how, and now, it's like, again, it's all about what makes you unique or different. Now with Stephen's example, he's saying climbing 7 summits and snowboarding, down. It's, I could see a wow line being something like, so what do? I show salespeople how to see a connection between, snowboarding down, mount something or other and closing sales. What? No one could walk away at that moment. So, I mean, by saying something's intriguing, but they have a sense of what you're talking about. Okay, you're some sort of an expert on sales or something about, snowboarding down K2 or something like that. It's like, what? I mean, it grabs their attention. So now they're ready for your single sentence summary, that how line, that kind of says, here's what I do. And then they're going to apply it to themselves. And then for an example, could be, what is a key point? What is a key insight or aha? Or in other words, you could either take them to the movie trailer example, where you give a bunch of really short examples of you in action, or maybe it's the pain aspect. I don't know. In your case, because you have so many things you could share, I think a movie trailer example would be the way to go. All right. So again, that is the formula, wow, how, now. The hardest thing, again, is that, again, the wow is about being interesting as opposed to simply being clever. The how is about, really is the single sentence summary. It's like, okay, how do we explain what our business is in an interesting way with a benefit or a hint of a benefit in one line? Then we stop, let the other person process what they're saying, and if they come back to us with a question, then we come back with, now for example, and then we, depending upon what type of point we're trying to make, we showcase what we do in a different type of example. Now, any conversation past this, it's important to realize we're not in an elevator speech anymore. We're actually having a true conversation. And often I from someone like, do you have a minute? Can you sit down? And then they kind of share their perspective on what it is that you do, and it turns into a little counseling session. Or it could be, hand me your card. I want to know more. We have a conference coming up. Good things can happen after that. Now, I've found that most speakers, once we get into it with the person we're talking to, we are golden. We know how to talk about our stuff, our content, our expertise. Our challenge is, how do you transition from so what do you do to getting to that point? And my recommendation to you is, here is a proven process that works with how people really talk to us, the wow, the how, and the now. All right, let's open it back up to some more questions.
Okay, we have quite a few specific questions about in the case of Medtronic, that is well-defined content. What if you're a motivational speaker whose job it is to motivate people and get people going?
Well, it's interesting that speakers, we always think of what we have to do is that's really challenging to say. And I think one shift is to say that I think anything is challenging. For example, Pitney Bowes or GE. How does GE describe what they do? Because they have all these different divisions and they have all these different products and services or things like that. So one is, I think, it's a weird shift, but don't think of us as having such a unique problem. Everybody struggles with this. So if we release that, it's not that it's your particular topic is so hard. It's just communicating what we do succinctly in anything is hard. to answer that question, when it comes to I'm a motivational speaker, there's some approach that you have. In other words, you don't just get people whooped up and excited. That there's some sort of insight. And so I would say, look at it like, okay, after you're done and people are drinking your Kool-Aid and they're saying, oh my gosh, you inspirational speaker, you helped me to do this and this and this. What are the words that they use? In other words, what are the insights? Now, like for example, when you look at the 7 habits, okay, the 7 habits of highly successful, people, most of us know that first concept, start with the end in mind. Now imagine that you were Stephen Covey, and before his book came out, and he was a speaker, and they said, oh, what do you talk about? It's like, his wow line could be, well, I help people start with the end in mind. What? Well, I'm a writer and author on how to be highly successful using techniques from this to this. Oh, process, 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 process. Now, for example, let's say you had a project where it said that most of the time people start with this, but instead, you see how that could work. So I would say find some answer. What is the coolest part of your inspirational or your motivational approach that people like? What is that insight? What is that aha? And find a way to craft that into your wow. All right, what else we got there, Carrie?
All right, we have someone that wants to know, are there some tricks when we want to start the conversation and ask the other person about their job?
I'm trying to understand the question, saying, are we trying to get them to ask us the question, or I'm not quite sure I'm understanding that question.
They're saying this is from Jonas, so maybe he can clarify more, but it says ask the other person about their job. So I think just kind of getting the conversation started.
Yeah, I mean that's a different type of personal dynamics. Yeah, if you ask someone what they do, it's almost the law of reciprocity that they're going to ask you what you do. So that is a way to get into it. I think this is more powerful and natural, where we just let this happen naturally. In other words, that I think most of us do not suffer a dearth of people asking us what we do. What we suffer from is answering the question as if they said, "Can you sell us?" And we know that that's not the best way to do it. So maybe if he could write in and clarify that there, because I don't know if I answered his question correctly.
All right. And how about this? In the how section, are you saying both parts before the other person speaks?
It depends. If you say the wow line and the person you're talking to is either going to non-verbally respond, which again, physically, they're going to cock their head and so at least their face moves, or they grunt or what, huh, or they will actually ask you a question. What do you mean? How does that work? Like in my case, I say, I'm a communications consultant and corporate humorist. What's a corporate humorist? Or they might go, what? Either way, that's the same thing. They have given you permission to keep talking. So so in some cases, yes, you may say the wow and how before they actually say a coherent line, and that's okay as long as they gave you some sort of response after your wow line that expressed interest, which again could be them cocking their head, raising an eyebrow, smiling, nodding, going, what? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay, and here's another one. Jean Ann Larson, she said, got the wow and the now. Can you say more about the how and how that bridges the wow and now?
Okay, say that one more time.
Okay, she says, got the wow and the now. Can you say more about the how that bridges the wow and now?
Here's the other person does it for you. You don't bridge it unless they say something. Because again, after you say the wow and the how, the other person's going to verbally process this concept that you just tossed in front of them, and they're going to apply it to themselves. And sometimes they won't. Some they'll, that sounds really cool. Anyways, in which case, do not keep talking. Because remember, this is all about how to create an elevator speech so people actually want you to keep talking. They may give you the New York face. You're done. I mean, boom, thanks for sharing. We're done. In which case, don't push it. But when they come back to you and say, so how does that work? So, or I'm not sure I'm following, or can you give me an example or something? They will ask you for the now, and that's when you give it to them.
Awesome. Okay. Here's a question from Barbara. She says, I train on public speaking, and there are heaps of people in Ireland doing this, so she wonders if a differentiator might be more effective than an example. Say, now here's how I differ rather than now for an example. What do you think?
I think that possibly for her would be to use the train wreck now, for example. And again, this sounds weird, but in essence, you're making fun or mocking of all those who do a bad job of training people in public, that type of thing. So let's say you do their topic, and the person, oh, yeah, so basically you train people in public speaking, so that, I mean, and they'll probably say something, so like you have them, like, imagine people naked and stuff like that. I mean, they're going to say things like that because that's the stereotype around that. And then you could say, you know, like, I know, isn't that what you do here? I mean, you go to those workshops, now, for example, you know, and then this happens, and they tell you to do this, and to that, and at the end, you know, they, you know, you're worse off than you started, or it's like, you know, or you're so stilted that, you know, they turn you into, you know, a mini trainer instead of your own person. To that. I prevent that from happening. Oh, good. So it might be the case that you differentiate yourself by proving you're not like them, but yet you understand how they're perceived. So that's a possible angle. Another way is to have in your you know in your how a hint of how you do your job differently. And now again, I don't know how, you know, what you do that is unique from the others in Ireland who do this, but again, it could be a case of, and I'm just going to make something up. Let's say, well, you know, maybe it would be your now. Now, for example, I use my you know 3-2-2 technique, and they're going to think, well, what's the 3-2-2? You know, I have you know, people say their opening line, you know, 3 times to 2 people on 2 different occasions, and you know, once people know how they're going to open, all of their nervousness of public speaking goes away. Now, see how that was now, for example. I have my 3-2-2 technique. So in essence, your now becomes a mini, you know, wow, now a little bit. My 3-2-2 technique, well, you know, what's that? And then you explain what it is, and you give them the benefit, and then it told a little story of you in action. So that, you know, that's an example. That's almost like a little bit of the movie trailer, you in action. What does you in action look like? So you use one of your concepts or a really cool or interesting aspect of what you do so they can see the value and go, oh, that sounds really interesting. Wow, cool, okay. Now, regardless of whether I'm going to be a client of yours or not, I now think, Barbara, that you are a more interesting, gosh, that Barbara, she's really sharp. She sounds really interesting. And maybe they plug that in the back of their head, and 2 years from now, when they have a need, they go, oh, gosh, was it Barbara Moneyhan? What was her name? You know, Moynihan? You know, and that's how it'll work.
All right, well, we are just about out of time. So, but thank you so much, Brian. I have learned a lot, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in Philadelphia when you present on how to be funnier, even if you're not that funny now, and your CSP CPAE exclusive session. If you would like more information on Brian's presentation and the rest of the NSA convention, please go to nsaspeaker.org/attend/convention. And if you'd like to see today's presentation again, this was recorded, and we will send you a link to watch the recording later this week. And I hope that you will all join us for the next webinar in the NSA Convention Countdown series, which is How to Position Yourself as a Niche Industry Celebrity with Jim Ziegler on June 5th, 2013 at 4 p.m. Eastern. Thanks again, Brian.
All right, thank you.